So the final method of depreciation calculation is what we refer to as DDB, double declining balance. Okay? And this formula is different from what we've used in the previous two methods. In this formula, you use cost minus accumulated depreciation times 2 times the straight line rate. And you're probably going, oh no, what does she mean by that? Well, I'm going to go ahead and show you what we mean by that. And so let's take, the best way to do this is to really take a look at an example. So again, we're on page 207, okay? Page 207, and this time we're looking at number 5. Okay? Number 5. And in this particular example, it says Sanders Catering purchases a van for $32,000. So we know that that's the cost. All right. It has an estimated salvage value of $6,000. So what you should notice right now is in this formula, we do not use the salvage value. We did in straight line and units of activity, but the salvage value is not part of the calculation under double declining balance. It doesn't mean you don't have to remember it. You do need to remember that the salvage value is $6,000 in here because the rule still holds true that you cannot depreciate below the $6,000. And so then it goes on to say that it is expected to be driven for 4 years, and Garrett uses the double declining balance method of depreciation. So the 4 years becomes, or any of that number that they give you, becomes the straight line rate. So if you wanted to, you could do 4 into 32,000 would be $8,000 times 2, or 50% for that first year. It's better to, we actually really need to use a percentage. And so what you do is you take 1 divided by 4, which equals 25 here, times 2 equals 50%. So every year you depreciate, you're going to take 50% depreciation. So that's how you compute the straight line rate. You can certainly just divide this by 4 and then double it each time, but that's very cumbersome. If you come up with a rate, it's a lot easier. So this means that if we used the straight line rate, we would basically be depreciating 25% a year for 4 years. In this case, it's 2 times the straight line rate. So in this formula for year 1, we have 32,000 minus, we don't have any depreciation because it's the first year, times 50% equals 16,000, right? That's year 1. Year 2, you now need to take the 32,000 minus the accumulated depreciation, which is this number. So what I like to do is my old T account thing, remember? I like to go ahead and post that there so I can keep track. I also like to just put over here the equipment amount. So then I can keep track of what the book value is. So in this case, I have $16,000 left over to depreciate. And so I'm going to take the accumulated depreciation here, which is 16, times the 50% again. So now that means that 16,000 times 50% is $8,000, I believe. I had a paper here, so let me find my paper. Yep, $8,000. Okay? So I'm going to take 8 here, and I'm going to subtract that, leaves me 8. Okay? So we know we're at, oh, excuse me. I I did that wrong. Let me erase that. So I add the 8, which is $24,000. So we know right now we have $8,000 more to depreciate of the asset. So here we go to year 3, and we put in the $32,000 minus accumulated depreciation. Well, remember now we have 2 years of depreciation, so the accumulated depreciation number is actually $24,000 times 50%. And so if I go ahead and do the math on that, that's 8,000 times 50% if we do year 4. So let's just, oh, excuse me, I already did year 3. This equals $4,000, right? If I use the formula. Now, if I go over here and I add 4,000, my accumulated depreciation is now 28,000. So 32 minus 28 leaves me a $4,000 salvage value, right? And I can only have what? 6,000. So that means that I don't use the calculation in the last year. I only can go up to the amount needed to get to my salvage value. So in this case, it would be $2,000. I would not be able to use the calculation because if I add 16 plus 10, I get 26,000, and 32 minus 6 is $26,000. So in this particular instance, you cannot use the calculation. And that's why I like using this little T account, even though it doesn't belong there. It's just to help me keep track of, so I know not to go below the salvage value. So in this particular year 3, your calculation says depreciation is 4,000, but you can only use the 2 because you cannot go below salvage value. So you would debit depreciation expense for 2,000 and credit accumulated depreciation for 2,000 for year 3. In the other 2 years, you would have booked 8,000 and you would have booked 16,000. Now, what I'm going to show you in class that will be very interesting is that it does not matter which depreciation method you use. At the end of the useful life, you will depreciate the same amount. It's just the timing of it. Are you front loading it? Are you doing it equally over time as we would with straight line? Or are you doing it more activity based? And we'll discuss that a little bit more in class.